Welcome to the Rated Rabbi Sports Card Podcast, where sports cards and pop culture meet the 1984 All-Star Game. Welcome back. This is episode 13. 1984 and actually the 1980s altogether were really a transitional time in baseball. Think about it. In the 70s, you had powerhouses. The A's won 72, 3, and 4. Big Red Machine 75, 76. New York Yankees 77 and 78. The 90s, Toronto wins a pair in 92 and 93. Yankees win 96, 98, 99, as well as in 2000. And for all their failures to finish what they started, Atlanta dominated the National League in the 1990s. But the 1980s were different. Think about this. In the 80s, only one team won more than one World Series. Who was it? The Dodgers. 1981 and 1988, the only team to repeat during the decade were the LA Dodgers, and even they only have 4 players on their roster who are on both the 81 and 88 ball clubs. Socha and Fernando are rookies in 1981. If you remember, they actually share an 81 tops with Jack Perconti. That's yep. I got a lot of that floating around. Jack Perconti, Mike Socha, and Fernando Valenzuela, 1981 tops. So those 2 guys are on both teams. Steve Sax plays on the 81 team, even though 82 is his rookie year, and when he wins the NL Rookie of the Year, Steve Sax. And the 4th player is Pedro Guerrero, Dominican. There was a ball player I loved to hate. I remember him breaking up Dave LaPointe's no-hitter at a game I was at. I'm like, again, put that with Jack Perconti. Dave LaPointe's no-hitter probably got broken up like the 5th inning, but I took it personally. So there aren't really dominant teams in the 1980s in baseball. And it's also a transitional time in terms of players. The older guys, the guys who really carried the game in the 1970s, and some of them even before then, are on their way out. This would be Reggie and Rod Carew's final All-Star game. Guys like Joe Morgan and Steve Carlton and Tom Seaver and Pete Rose are all on their way out. And newer players are kind of just coming on, right? We all have Sandberg and Gwynn make their first All-Star appearances in the 84 game. Boggs would appear later. Cal Ripken, of course, is just making his ascent. Kirby Puckett is a rookie in 1984. You have guys like Gooden and Strawberry are just beginning their ascent. Clemens and Bonds are not quite on the scene, but they're on their way. The peak stars of the game at this time, really, other than Mike Schmidt, who I think he's iconic, although the hobby doesn't give him nearly the love that I think he deserves for the career he had and how dominant a player, how central a player he was in the 70s and 80s. But other than him, the all-stars, I think, are like a little bit, well, they're not top of the pyramid. Gary Carter, Jim Rice, Eddie Murray, Keith Hernandez, all Hall of Famers. But they don't come first to mind when you remember the all-time greats. Some of the other guys who were carrying the 1980s, we've already talked about, guys like Steve Garvey and Dale Murphy. They're not even in the Hall. And yet, looking back at this time period, it's a time actually of tremendous talent overall. In 1984, there are 26 big league teams, 25-man rosters, giving us 650 total players. And at that time, during the 84 season, there will end up being 35 future Hall of Famers, 5% of big league rosters. That seems like a big number to me. Barry talked about that there were 16 future Hall of Famers still active who didn't make the game. Plus, there was also Joe Torre, another future Hall of Famer who's the skipper of the Braves. We've mentioned that on that day, there were 19 future Hall of Famers elected to the All-Star game, plus future Hall of Fame managers Tony La Russa and Tommy Lasorda and Sparky Anderson. That gives us 22. There were 2 on the field already Hall of Famers, our honorary captains, Greenberg and McCovey. 24. There was 1 Hall of Famer who threw out 1 of 2 first pitches, Carl Hubble. 25. Up in the booth, there were 3 future Hall of Famers, Earl Weaver, Jim Palmer, and of course, Don Drysdale, who would be enshrined later that summer along with Pee Wee Reese, 28. And in the seats, I believe in the second inning, a cameraman catches the Yankee Clipper Joe DiMaggio, 29. And the title of this episode is A Barry on Top. So the PA announcer, just before turning it over to Chuck Mangione and his flugelhorn to lead us in the Canadian national anthem, mentions that there are the national teams from Chinese Taipei, a Japanese all-star team, and the U.S. Olympic Baseball Team out on the field. They were in short right field and short left. The PA announcer described them as making the Olympic rings, but I was doing my research when I figured this out, and those aren't rings. It's a bunch of young men kind of standing in clumps behind second and behind short. So it's the 1984 U.S. Olympic team. Now, we are going to do a whole episode on that team, on those summer games. Did you know that from that team, from that 84 Olympic team, 18 of the 20 players on the roster would be drafted in the first round in either 1984 or 1985. 17 of those 20 players would make it to the show. Who are the 3? 2 of them are actually, the 2 of them are featured in that 85 top set with the iconic Mark McGwire. 2 of them with cards, Sid Aikens and the legendary Flavio Alfaro, who actually quits the game at 24. And the third one is Bob Caffrey. Sid Aikens, Flavio Alfaro have cards. Caffrey does not. Sid Aikens, Flavio Alfaro do have cards, don't make the show. And yet Will Clark does not have a card. Who is the Barry on top? He doesn't have a card either. The guy who does not have a card, who is there, just this young little pitcher, he's 20 years old. He's not even been drafted yet. He's still playing at the University of Michigan. The Barry on top is future Hall of Famer Barry Larkin. Now, I am beside myself with excitement, friends. I've been doing my research, and I just put 2 and 2 together when the PA announcer announces that the U.S. Olympic team is on the field. And I realize there's not 29 future Hall of Famers there. We got a Barry on top. We got 30 Hall of Famers that day with Hall of Fame shortstop Barry Larkin. So Barry Larkin is taken in the first round, number 4 overall, 1985 draft. Those taken ahead of him all had pretty good careers. B.J. Surhoff taken number 1. He was a beast coming out of college. Had a good career. He played like a catcher or a shortstop, an outfielder. That guy had a good run. Number 2, of course, is Will the Thrill. And number 3 is Bobby Witt. Barry Larkin is taken number 4 by his hometown Cincinnati Reds, which has got to be a dream come true. Larkin grew up in Silverton. You know who else is from Silverton? Roger Staubach. I lived in Cincinnati for 4 years, like 2009, 2013, in Pleasant Ridge, about a mile and a half from Silverton. So it's right there. It's its own village, but for all intents and purposes, it's a part of Cincinnati. Where did Barry Larkin go to high school, you ask? He went to Moeller High School, Archbishop Moeller High School. Who is the all-time most famous graduate from Moeller High School? Another Hall of Famer, Junior. Ken Griffey Jr. went to Moeller. Nevertheless, Larkin is a super legend at the high school. He plays not only baseball, where he stars at shortstop, he is a star defensive back for the Moeller football team. Who is his coach at Moeller High? I'm going to, you came to learn about the 1984 All-Star game. Innocent enough. You don't ask for much. Entertain me. Talk a little about baseball. Talk a little about baseball cards. And then the next thing you know, I'm dropping Gerry Faust on you. Gerry Faust was the coach at Moeller High School. Gerry Faust built that program. He was their head coach from 1962 through 1980, amasses a record of 178, 23, and 2. 178, 23, and 2 wins 4 mythical high school national championships. Where does he go after the 1980 season? Uber successful coach, Catholic dominant city, Catholic high school. Where does he go? Goes to another Midwestern Catholic dominated Catholic school. Dan Devine at Notre Dame is retiring, and the Notre Dame athletic director, the AD, hires Gerry Faust to be their head coach. And no offense, Coach Faust, I think you were a little bit over your head. He's up and down. His high water record, I believe, is 7-5. His highlights of his tenure, he appears in the Liberty Bowl. He appears in the Aloha Bowl as Notre Dame's head coach. But you and I both know boosters don't hire and pay for coaches and don't consider highlights to be Liberty Bowl and Aloha Bowl appearances. The low point of Gerry Faust's Notre Dame career comes in his final game as the head coach of the Fighting Irish. I don't know any other way than to call his 58-7 loss to the University of Miami in the Orange Bowl just a drubbing. 58-7. Who did he lose to? Who was on the other sidelines that day? Let's take a look. It's this guy, helmet hair, Jimmy Johnson, University of Miami head coach. Jimmy Johnson never met a score. He didn't like to run up, and he sure liked getting the ball to the other guy right there in a 91 Bowman. Wore number 47 at the U, number 88 for the Cowboys. Of course, I'm talking about Michael Irvin. Those guys are rascals. Had some good rivalries with the Niners, and so the Barlow got sick of it and bought everybody. We're getting Dion, Ricky Jackson, Richard Dent, Ken Norton Jr. We're not losing to the Cowboys again. Man, those are good showdowns. Jimmy Johnson, a Hall of Famer. Absolutely, with that hairspray, but he always seemed like he was having a good time doing what he did. Runs up the score on Faust and the Irish at the Orange Bowl. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. It's the end of the road for you, 58-7. All right, you didn't come here to talk football. Maybe you did. You sadly didn't come here to talk Jimmy Johnson. Maybe you did. I don't know. Came here to talk about baseball. Barry Larkin. Larkin goes to University of Michigan, where he's recruited on a football scholarship as a defensive back by Bo Schembechler. Goes to Michigan because Bo says he can play 2 sports. Bo says he can play football and baseball, but when he gets there, Schembechler says, Son, this is the University of Michigan. No one comes here to play baseball. He redshirts Larkin on the football team, and Larkin walks. Larkin's like, I'm done with this. He goes and just plays baseball only, rips it up at the University of Michigan as a Wolverine. He hits 482 for his career. He's a two-time Big Ten Player of the Year, a two-time All-American. Actually, he's a teammate and a future teammate at Michigan and a future teammate of Chris Sabo. Both of them were drafted together. Both of them went through the minors, albeit rather briefly. And both of them, of course, played for the Reds and were on that 1990 World Series winning team. So let's check out some of those career numbers for Barry Larkin. Then we're going to look at a card in just a sec. Larkin is a 12-time All-Star. He wins 3 Gold Gloves, 1994, 1995, 1996, a 9-time Silver Slugger. He wins the 1993 Roberto Clemente Award for Outstanding Menschlichkeit, right, just for being a sportsman. He is the first shortstop ever to go 30-30, which he did in 1996. The previous year, 1995, Larkin wins the Most Valuable Player award in the National League in a very, very close vote. He wins 281 votes from the writers, finishing second with 251 votes is Dante Bichette. Yeah, bring back. That's a great name, man. I like my name, but who wouldn't want to be named Dante? Just sounds like a cool guy. Yo, Dante, what's your name? My name's Dante Bichette. And in 1995, I hit 40 home runs. I drove in 128. I hit 340. Coors Schmores, you try to put those numbers up. Just behind Bichette, finishing a strong third, is Greg Maddux at 249 votes. Now, some people say that there's no place for a pitcher in an MVP race, but I say hogwash. That's all fine with me. If a guy's an MVP, he's an MVP, and it's kind of sexy when a guy goes Cy Young and MVP, like the 1984 Cy Young and MVP award winner, Willie Don't Call Me Guillermo Till Later Hernandez. Maddux puts up a year of years in 95. Doesn't win the MVP, of course, wins the Cy Young. Remember when Maddux used to just be like, oh my God, the guy was crazy. In 95, he goes 19-2 for the Braves. His ERA is 1.63. He has a 0.81 whip across 209 2/3 innings. Remember when Maddux, man, if you didn't get to him in the first inning, yeah, you weren't going to get to him, man. That kid was just. He is the unanimous winner of said Cy Young Award in 1995. Who finishes second? Because they had to fill out a ballot. You still had to vote a first, second, third. Who finishes second in the Cy Young Award? It's not teammate Tom Glavine. Glavine, I believe, finishes third. Who finishes a distant second behind Greg Maddux in 1995 for the NL Cy Young Award winner? If you said Pete Schurig, you'd be absolutely correct and crazier than I am. I Google for that. I didn't know that part off the top of my head. Anyway, Barry Larkin makes the Hall of Fame in 2012 on his third try. 19 seasons, a career WAR of 70. In 2010, he got about 51.5% of the votes, boosted up to 62+% in 2011 before getting 86.4%, easily making it across the finish line and being enshrined in Cooperstown in 2012. Let me know what you think. Barry Larkin, what would it have been like? I wonder if he took a minute and sought out Buddy Bell. Buddy Bell is another Cincy guy. Buddy Bell was an all-star that day. Buddy Bell also went to Moeller High School. I wonder what it was like for Barry Larkin on that day, right? Just a kid out there in short left field, dreaming of one day being an all-star, never really knowing he'd someday be a 12-time all-star. I'm showing his 87 rookie here. That wood grain, little nod to the 62 set. Barry Larkin 87 rookie card. Kind of nice. All right. That's it for episode 13 of Barry on Top. Now you know there were not 29 future Hall of Famers that day. There were an even 30. Barry Larkin getting us up over the top. If you like these, let me know. Give me a like. I love your comments. Adam from Ohio, thank you for straightening out my Longfellow regarding what was the ballpark where McCovey was photographed in that iconic 69 tops. It was not Busch Stadium as I thought it was. It actually, thank you, Adam, was absolutely Shea Stadium. Thank you once again. If you like what we're doing, leave a like, give me a comment, subscribe, but most of all and best of all, just tell one person. All right, I will be back on Friday. Until we meet again, may you enjoy health and long life. So long for now.